After listening to the last 3 Sundays' gospel, there's no doubt in my mind that God has a green thumb. He loves to make stuff. The very first thing he creates after the stars and the heavens and the seas is the earth and a garden. It's a beautiful garden with everything there. And inside the garden, the piece de resistance is the vineyard, the grapevines. And of course, the grapevines are the place where it produces the vintage grapes that makes the wine, as the scripture tells us, that gladdens man's soul. And it was good. It was good. After every day of creation, they said it was good. And we as Catholics buy into this incarnational view of the world, that all of creation, all of the animals, all of the plants are shot through with the presence of the divine. Catholics take that very seriously. We take the incarnation very seriously. That's why we drink wine. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite little couplet poems comes from Hilaire Belloc, who says, "Wherever the Catholic sun doth shine, there's always laughter and dancing and good red wine. At least I've always found it so. Benedicamus Domino." It's good. It's very, very good. Today we are talking about the vineyard of the Lord. As a matter of fact, the last 3 Sundays we've been talking about the vineyard of the Lord. And there are many different levels that we can always interpret the scriptures on. And the least penetrating level is the literal level, or the fundamentalist level. We get in lots of trouble when we take the scriptures word for word exactly as they mean. If we become originalists with the scriptures, we're in trouble. But if we can interpret the levels of spiritual meaning, not just on an individual level or a corporate level as Isaiah does today, but on a personal, deep level in our own spiritual life, even in our own times today. The scriptures always speak, and today I think they are shouting at us. You know, for the last 3 weeks, we've listened to St. Matthew talk about God's vineyard. In the first one, he's talking to his disciples, and he's giving an individual message for individual people. And that is this, that God is generous, incredibly generous. He just throws everything at us. And no matter when you show up, he's still going to bless you. He's going to give you his wage. The problem is that we're not always happy with what he's giving to us, especially if we've been working in the vineyard all day long. So we think we have a right to more. And then he gives this killer line at the end. The master of the vineyard says, "It is my vineyard and it's my money. Am I not able to do what I want with my own money, with my own property?" And then he gives the killer line, "Or are you jealous because I'm generous?" And of course, the shamefaced answer is, yeah, I am. I've got to change my ways. So that's the message of 2 weeks ago. The message of last week was similar, only this time he's not talking to his disciples. He's talking to the powers that be. He's talking to the priests and the Pharisees and the scribes and those who run the show. And he's telling the story of 2 sons of the master who owns the vineyard. And he says to the first son, "Go and work in my vineyard." And he says, "Yes, I will. I'm on my way." And he goes to bed. And the second son, he says, "Go work in my vineyard." He says, "No, I'm not going to go." And later on, he changes his mind and he goes and works in his vineyard. And which one did the master's work? And of course, the answer is the one who changed his mind. He says, "The prostitutes and the tax collectors are getting in before you because you couldn't change your mind. You think that you had it all. You think that you owned it all." Well, today we've got those same 2 stories. And of course, the killer line in both of the stories is the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Those coming in at the end are going to get taken care of. And if you think you've owned it by being there at the beginning and you've worked your way through, don't be so secure on your feet. And today he's going to tell the story again. Sometimes you got to hear things 3 times before they finally sink in. Well, he's going to tell the story again. Not only is he going to tell it again, but he's going to tell it in 2 different versions. We're going to hear it in the version of Isaiah, which was our first reading today. And by the way, when Jesus is telling this parable today, he's giving it to a Jewish audience. They know Isaiah by heart. They know what Isaiah was saying. Now, what did the gardener make? The gardener made this beautiful paradise. And in this paradise, he planted a vineyard and he cleared the rocks, which is a terrible job to do if you've ever been a farmer, taking the rocks out of the ground. And he tilled the soil and he planted the vines and he watered the vines and he dug a pit and he put up a watchtower. I mean, he's working his rear end off because he wants it to be perfect. He wants what? He wants the grapes. He wants the fruit of the vine. He's given you so much. What are you going to do with it? And of course, what does Isaiah say? Look what you've done. Injustice, hatred. And so in anger, what does God do? He tears down his vineyard. What he built up is getting torn down. He's not really tearing it down. What is being torn down was by the lack of care that the people are giving to him. And so he's telling, you've just really screwed it up. Well, that's exactly what's going on today in the gospel. Only there's a twist. There is going to be some produce coming out of the vineyard. And so he goes through the whole thing. He put up a watchtower to protect it, and he planted the vines, and he watered it, and he tilled the soil, and all that good stuff was going on. And then he leased it out to the tenant farmers. Here's the deal. They don't own the land. We don't own the land. We don't own squat. Oh, we have all kinds of legal papers that tell us this is my private property, and we will abide by that. But the great reality is that we don't own it. We're stewards. We're stewards of the land, and they are stewards of the land too, but they get caught in all kinds of silly magical thinking that, no, it's theirs, they've worked it, they've tilled it, they can have it, it's theirs. And so what does he do? He sends people to get their fair share of the harvest of the grapes. He sends prophets. He sends judges. He sends people to say, here's the right way to do it. Give us our share, and then you're going to get your share, and we're going to be fine. And what do? They beat the first. They killed the second. They kill the prophets. And then he does the piece de resistance. By the way, Jesus is telling the story on the Monday of Holy Week. He's just cleared the temple. He's in Solomon's portico, and he's telling this story. And he's going to be crucified. And he knows he is going to lay down his life on behalf of the people who have no use for him at all. And so he's telling this story. He says, finally, he sends his son. Surely they will respect my son. What do they think? This is called magical thinking. The Alcoholics Anonymous call it stinking thinking. All right? Father William McNamara said that the greatest sin of the modern world is mendacity. You know what mendacity is? Lying. Lying to ourselves. Thinking that we are in charge, that we can control, that we can do whatever we can. And this is a terrible modern sin of modern man and modern woman. Certainly the old American Indians had no sense of this land being theirs. It was God's land. It was the Great Spirit in the sky. They never cut a tree down until they asked for permission, and they didn't what? They didn't kill a buffalo until they asked for forgiveness. Whatever they took out of the earth, they put back into the earth. We think it's ours, we can just take it out. And so he sends his son, and by their stinking thinking, they think that if they kill the son, then they get the property, that it's theirs. It never was theirs. It never is going to be theirs. They're the stewards. Now, I got a hunch. You know where this is going. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple's mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. Has there ever been a greater paradise than the one that God has given to us? To us. Has there ever been a more magnificent vineyard than the vineyard in which we are given to live? And what does he ask us to do? He asks us to produce fruit. And we can literally feed the world. We can take care of the need. There is enough food in the world to feed the world. There is enough for everyone's need. There is not enough for everyone's greed. And what have we done with the vineyard? What have we done with the vineyard? We've polluted the streams so the water can't be drunk. We've poisoned the air so it can't be breathed. Why? Because we think we own it. We take out what we do not put back in. We poison the very place we are called to live. And the vineyard, even as I speak, in Northern California is on fire. The ice caps melt. The rainforest is being depleted. What's going to happen? He did send us prophets. We have not listened to the prophets. In 1962, Rachel Carlson wrote The Silent Spring. She said, look, it's coming, it's coming. You got to do something about it right now. We are polluting ourselves. We are killing ourselves. We paid no attention. When the hole in the ozone layer was discovered with the fluorocarbons, we finally did something about that. But by and large, we have been much more concerned with the bottom line than we have been with the bottom line. And so he finally sent his son. Well, we don't have his son. But we've got his vicar. We've got the vicar of Christ. And his name is Francis. And 5 years ago, he wrote an encyclical that nobody read, called Laudato Si. And he said in unequivocal terms that if we do not take care of our mother, we are going to strangle her. She is going to die. The hedges were torn down. All kinds of terrible things have happened. We are the ones in charge. We don't own it. It's on loan to us. We are stewards of it. We have given him wild grapes when he looks for the vintage. The vineyard can be taken away from us. It really can. And the question is, to whom will it go? To whom will it go? The cockroaches?